Okay, so now you've got your question. The next job is to find out whether it's already been answered. Now, there's pluses and minuses to this. First of all, what you have to do is go away and read. Read, 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 read. Read like there is no tomorrow. If you're doing your research in a team, split up the reading, all take different journals, read, read, read. Because you're going to have to read as much stuff in this field as possible to find out whether they've already answered this question. The pluses and the minuses? Well, the pluses, if you find an answer to the question, yay, you've answered your question. Now you know the answer. Not so yay, the question's been answered. You can't do a research study on something that's already been answered. It's already been answered. What's the point? There's no point in you studying it when actually you know the answer because the research has already found the answer. Now, here's where you're going to get clever. You're going to go to me, but Faye, it's only been studied in America. Or, but Faye, it was studied 30 years ago. Is it the same today? But Faye, it was only studied in men. It wasn't studied in women. Maybe there's a difference. Pretty good. Now you're thinking like a researcher. But I'm going to say to you, but student, it was only studied in people who like pot noodles. It wasn't studied in people who don't like pot noodles. Maybe you should run that study. It was only studied in people with brown hair. It wasn't studied in people with red hair. Run that study. Only studied in people with blue eyes, not studied in people with brown eyes. Run that study. You're going to go, wait, what? Pot noodle? What? Has Faye been drinking? What does that have to do with anything? Whether people like pot noodle or not is irrelevant to my study. That's my question. Is it relevant which country they were in? Is it relevant their gender or their sex? Is it relevant whether it was done 30 years ago or today? And if you can tell me honestly, yes, it's relevant. And here's some research that shows how things have changed in the last 30 years, and we don't know whether this question is the same answer today. Or here's some research that shows that in America, things are different to the UK, and we don't know whether this question would be the same answer here. If you can give me that kind of evidence and give me a real reason why we would want to test it with this different population, with this different location, a different point in time, if you can do that, excellent. We now have a research question that hasn't been answered. If you can't, though, we really need to think about it in a little bit more depth because it might mean that the research question has been answered and that the findings that have already been done can be generalised to everybody, or at least to the population you're thinking of. So you need to really ask the question, the findings that are already out there, have they answered my question? And if they've answered my question with a specific population, could that actually be generalised? If it couldn't, what difference are you expecting? Are you expecting there to be a difference? Because if you're not, why are you doing it? If you are expecting there to be a difference, great. That means we have a research question that potentially has not yet been answered. Okay, so let's say you have been reading your little socks off and you have got a question and you cannot find the answer. Doesn't mean there's no answer out there. You just might not have found the right paper. But, you can only read so much. You can't read for the rest of your life searching for the answer. Someone will probably publish it while you're halfway through. And by the way, that sucks as a researcher. You spend 2 years working on a project and just before you write it up, somebody publishes first. No way you're getting around that. I'm afraid it just sucks. But we can't avoid that. So all you can do is the best you can do. You read as much as possible. You try and look at the field as widely as you possibly can, as deeply as you possibly can. And if you can't find the answer to your question, you're just going to have to roll with the fact that there is no answer at the moment. And that means you've got a gap in the market. Think of it like a commercial thing. If you were trying to get a product out there, if you wanted to sell, think about being on like Dragon's Den. If you wanted to sell, you've got to evidence that there is a gap in the market. This has not already been filled by somebody else. If you can honestly tell me that your research question hasn't been answered, you've got a gap in the market, then we need to move to the next issue. Is it worth filling that gap? I mean, there's loads of research studies that I could do, right? Let me think. I could do a study on, do people prefer picking their nose with their index finger or their middle finger? Now, that's an interesting study in the sense that it's disgusting and would really appeal to 5-year-olds. It's not an interesting study in the sense that it would give anybody any benefits in the world. I'm pretty confident, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I'm pretty confident that study has not yet been conducted. So I've got a gap. But it's not been conducted for a very good reason. Nobody needs to know the answer to this question. The answer is useless. That's the next thing to address. You've got a research question. You've found that the research question hasn't been answered. But is the answer actually anything valuable? Is it worth finding out that answer? In order to do this research study, you're going to have to use a lot of your time up. That's using up resource. You're potentially going to be working with participants. You're going to be using their time up. That's using up resource. Is it worth doing? Is it valuable? Is it really a useful thing for you to actually do? And even more importantly and specifically, if you're studying counselling, is it valuable to the counselling community? A really good way to test this is to imagine you've done your study. Imagine you've got your results and don't preempt them. The results can go in any direction, but just imagine all the different directions that they could go in. And now imagine you are at a conference and in front of you is 100 of the biggest named counsellors in history. I'm talking figures from history. We've got Rogers, we've got Freud, we've got Beck. They're all in there. And they're sitting there waiting for you to tell them how your findings is going to change their practice. What are you going to say? Is it likely that your results are going to have any impact in the field of counselling whatsoever? If not, why are you doing this study? If actually it's kind of, well, I'm kind of interested in which finger you pick your nose with, but mainly because I'm gross, but there's no real value in it in the world, so not much point doing it. If actually you've got a really good research question which has not yet been answered and has genuine value in the field, that's where we want to get to. So, if on reflection your research question either has been answered or actually isn't worth doing because the answer isn't that valuable, isn't relevant to counselling, won't help any counsellors in the future, doesn't really relate to the field, isn't really a useful finding in any way, shape, or form, you need to go away and think of a new research question. If you like, rewatch this video once you've got a new question to remind yourself of what you need to be asking. But essentially, you need to go away and read, find out whether there's an answer is already out there. Is there a gap in the market? And if there is a gap in the market and the answer has not already been found, then is the answer valuable? Is it worth doing? Is it relevant to counselling? Will it actually impact on the field of counselling? Once you've got the answers to those questions and you feel, yes, I've got a good research question, it does the things it needs to do, move on to the next video.